All right. Let's see if Nick is here. He was gonna introduce us. Okay. All right, cool. Everyone's ready, translation's ready. Recording start, please. Take a sip. Nice. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. We have this is a special kind of, let's get ready for the mixed nuts term starting on Monday to get us warmed up for this deep philosophy that we're going to experience for the next 2 weeks. And Nick asked me to host today's event. He said, Tim, now I'm your boss. You have to do what I say. So anyhow, so today we're going to have a lively discussion, hopefully, about dependent origination. You know, in the text, it's called interdependence, the proof of interdependence. And it's a section from Betz Greer book, Emptiness Meditations. And she's here listening today to make sure we don't screw it up. And there's a beautiful section on the proof of interdependence. And then there's this cool section that happens right afterwards that Choni Lama adds in, all right, now that we've studied all of this, what the heck do we do with it? How do we practice it? So we're going to go into that, and I'm going to draw out from the panelists how they practice interdependence. So Peter, there's your homework for the next half an hour. Okay. All right, cool. So first of all, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. And I'm going to do it by way of question. So first I'm going to ask a question about the text, and then I'm going to have you introduce who you are when I ask you first. How about that? I know, Rachel, relax. It's nerdy and practical. It's okay. So first, I'm going to start with Peter Myrtle. He's a wonderful ACI teacher, amazing DCI teacher, and he's now in the throes of living in Moscow, right? And he's been a great mentor of mine for many, many years. So welcome, Peter. So the first question I have is, you know, we're jumping in the middle of the text, Peter. Like we're just it's like verse, I don't know, somewhere around 400. And prior to that, Choni Lama talks about the different kinds of dependence. You know, so the third one, we're going to be talking about the third one in this class, right? So I'm wondering if you could give us, if you feel comfortable, give us a short, 5-minute sales pitch on like the other types of dependence that lead us up to this third one. Mm-hmm. If you're comfortable with it.
I can try. Then we have a lot of people who can be quality control, which makes me feel happy. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be on that panel. I'm here the first time and it's exciting. Thank you, Tim, for arranging it, and Nick for doing all the work also. So the dependent origination discussion was highly confusing for me when I started to learn it. Because I didn't really get the point of the first two. I mean, you can read the explanations of the first two attempts to explain dependent origination. And then the third one is really mind-blowing also. But the way I see it, you could argue that we all are here right now in this session, and we're all studying, and we're all to different degrees crazy about understanding emptiness and seeds. Actually, all on a very high level crazy, I think, because we want to figure out dependent origination, right? Even if we don't call it like that. But I mean, you know, sometimes people say emptiness is going to save you, but that's not really true, because emptiness has existed forever, and we've had countless lives forever, and it has never done anything for us except for keeping us in suffering so far, right? Because samsara is a projection onto emptiness, and we did not manage to do anything with it yet. And so the key to getting out of suffering, in a way you could claim, is understanding dependent origination. And so the first one, and please correct me if I'm wrong on that one, basically means that things, you know, things work, or things function for us, and things exist because they work and function. And that's because they depend on their causes and conditions. And the problem is that that's a nice theoretical way of saying it, but it's just not true, right? I mean, it's not true when we start to talk about food or drink. It's for me always the ultimate idea. If the cup that we're both holding and drinking, Tim, cheers, would do us any good because of its causes and conditions, meaning there's a liquid in there, and when I put it into my body, I get more happy, which is why I'm drinking something. I'm more happy on some level. Then cup 235 would also have to do the same thing. And that's not the case. So the causes and conditions, if I look at that water that I put into my body to get more healthy or more happy, is not explaining what's really going on. That's one level why that whole explanation of that things depend on their causes and conditions was so frustrating for me, because it didn't do anything for me. I think Geshe-la gives the example that you could look on your, on your map, because everything in what we're discussing is always related to getting more happy, right? We should always remember that, which is in an academic session sometimes difficult. But one way to get more happy could be to decide you want to have less desire, for example. Like not being forced to, for example, run after girls, and being always, your mind is always on the other sex and trying to get a partner for specific reasons. And so one famous example is to say, well, think of your partner or your lady or your boyfriend as just being atoms and being put together in certain ways. But again, that doesn't do much for me, right? Which gets us to the second way of explaining dependent origination. Because one of the academic reasons why the first one, that everything is based on causes and condition, ultimately fails, is because there are things that are not caused, like empty space or emptiness. And you can explain that with that first definition of dependent origination. Because how do you explain unchanging things which are not caused? Which then brings us to the idea that it's the second level, that people say, well, it doesn't depend, things don't depend on their causes and conditions, but they depend on their parts, right? And again, for me, when I studied it, irrespective of the exciting intellectual sexiness of that debate, which is undeniably there, it doesn't help me to reduce my desire for Maria, for example, when I think that she consists of parts. I mean, it's funny, but it's true, right? Then I'm thinking, well, I like the parts also, but it doesn't stop. It doesn't do much for me to think of things as consisting of parts. And so, I'm sorry, I don't know, Tim, if I'm going there the way you wanted me to go. Okay, but the first two levels kind of are helpful ultimately to me for my daily life, because I realize that the usual way I think about how things works always fail. Because usually when I think of a pen, I do think still, it comes from a fact. That's why I go and buy it at a shop. I can do something with it, and that's why I call it a pen, right? If it wouldn't work anymore, I would call it garbage. So the moment when that thing shifts from working to not working, it changes what it is for me, because it doesn't do anymore what it wants, and it doesn't create the causes and conditions that I want to have in my world. And then the second one with the parts is again helpful to explain unchanging things. But the most important one, which I guess we're leading up to, is, and that's for me the unbelievable story of the pen. That one object which has exactly the same parts all together and the same causes and conditions can be something completely different validly to two different people looking at it. Like that thing, you know, if you ask someone what is it, they say pen. If I give it to a dog, what is it? It's a chewing toy. The causes and conditions that created that thing, first level of dependent originations, and the sum of its parts, which created that thing, second level of dependent origination, is not different at all, and yet someone sees something completely different in it and is right. Oh, dog slur. I saw it now. Yes. So if your goal was to ask me what I find cool about the first two levels of dependent origination, I would say ultimately it is that I realized through the explanation that they don't work. You know, that they are lower, that they are lower levels, which are ultimately cool to think about. They're amazing in the sense that when you realize that although the sum of the parts exists, it still doesn't make the object do what I see. That kind of opens a window to miracles. Because with the same logic, you could say, well, then what you see right now obviously just depends on what you're projecting onto it, and therefore it could be total bliss and ecstasy, and this thing could trigger your enlightenment right now if you had to sit straight.
Cool. Thanks. I think that was this is a really complex class. So I think, Peter, you gave us a really great build up, because like you said things that I think might be controversial for people, where you said, oh, causes and conditions aren't enough, or it's not it, right? Oh, then why do we teach the 4 steps? Right? You know, kind of thing. So, you know, we'll ask that kind of question. There's one other piece that I want to go into before we get to the reading. And I'm going to toss it over to Maria, and hopefully she can add into it. So Maria is Peter's, Maria and Peter are partners. Okay. And she drug him to Russia recently. She's going to make him into a real Russian man. I don't know what that means. So, and she's a wonderful teacher across organizations. She's great at the ancient texts. She's also great at making it very accessible in a more business language. So Maria, the one main thing to discuss about the section about parts, right? We moved out of causes and conditions. Things depend on their parts. There's a whole understanding of things as not being one and not being many. Okay. So I'm wondering if you can say hello to all of us and maybe give us a little, like, the thing is, everyone, I'm sorry, we're going slow because in order to understand the text where we are, we have to understand how we get there. Okay. So part of it is understanding this argument about things are neither one nor many. And I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit of background on that.
Thank you, Tim, and hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I'm second time in this mixed nut session, and it's so cool to see all different people from all over the world. And you know, Tim, I like this story about parts now more and more, because we are in the Russian-speaking world doing DCI advanced level now. And there is big discussions because in the DCI advanced level, Geshe Michael did the proof of one and many in a very cool way. And
quite convenient that I asked you about it right now, right?
yeah, and it's and you know, we have some old ACI, DCI students, and then some new people who come to this level, DCI level, for the first time. It's like first thing they hear. And they are like, what? I think when you hear it at the beginning, it's like not easy to maybe understand the story with the parts. But actually, it's not, in a way, after you think about it for some time, it's not that difficult in a way. And I do like the way Geshe Michael explains it with ice cream and chocolate sauce. It's really cool. Like, I really like to find ways how to explain difficult ideas about emptiness and seeds to people with a simple language, people who are not studying ACI yet, maybe. And I really like that ice cream with chocolate. But the main idea, let me try to explain a little bit, is that if a thing has parts, then it does not exist really. And that's the main thing about that. And then we consider different things, physical things, mental things, and things that are neither mental nor physical. And if we consider them and we prove that each thing that we can, let's say physical thing, each physical thing we can take, always we will find parts, even if we go to molecules and atoms and so on. And then if it has parts, then it does not exist really, meaning it does not exist from its own side. And the same with mental things. And for mental things, I like to divide any mental things into parts in time. Like one instant of time, another instant of time. And you can always divide these instances of time, cut them. You can always cut in the middle, and then there will be another small part, again cut in the middle. And there is unlimited parts, and you will never actually find one thing. And so then the question is, as Peter started to talk about parts, this pen has the same parts, but different beings perceive completely different thing. Why is that? And here's Geshe Michael with ice cream and chocolate sauce. He says, look, yes, they're parts, and if they're parts, then who is gluing together these parts? Well, you are gluing them together. Like if I am a human, which I think I am, then I see a pen. I'm gluing these parts into pen, and it's like a chocolate sauce on ice cream. And then apparently dog has a different sauce, maybe not chocolate, vanilla sauce, and covering the same parts and seeing completely different thing, which is a chewing toy. And it's cool to think about it. That's what I was doing last 2 hours before this meeting. I was sitting in a coffee shop, reading the text, and I was thinking about different parts. And I actually have a question to ask. Maybe all these smart people here can help me to understand. We had a very cool question on the Q&A session of the DCI advanced level. And Peter was answering, by the way, perfect answer. But still I'm thinking, I'm sorry, Peter, maybe you can help me with that. Still I'm thinking, with things that are not mental and not physical. Example, seeds. Is it correct that seeds are not mental and not physical? Right, one of the examples. What are the parts of seeds? How I shall apply this proof of one and many, which is based on things having parts? How I should think what are the parts of seeds? I was really thinking about that, and I would like to hear your ideas.
That's a great question. We should come to the mixed nuts because one of the books is in that question. I don't know. Let's toss that. Let's kick that over to Mr. John Brady and see if he, John Brady is again, an amazing teacher and a teacher mentor of mine for many, many years. I met him when he came out of 3-year retreat. It was like 8 years ago, I think that was. And I've learned so much from him, and just how to be a better person and I don't know how JB does it, but every time I show up at his house, he always has exactly what I need. It's like, hey, you need something to drink? You need some food? And it's a perfect example of how to be when guests come over. But let's toss that question over to you, JB, about, seeds, Maria, could you repeat the question again, just so, because I kind of took us off on an introduction. I just want to bring our mind back into the question.
So the question is, let's consider seeds as an example of something which is not physical and not mental. And if I want to find parts of seeds or a mental seed to prove that it does not really exist, what are the parts? How to look at the parts of a mental seed?
Thanks, Maria. And thank you, Tim, for hosting, and thank everyone for coming to this early morning wake-up call for all of us. I mean, it's a nice way to start the day, to start discussing, dependent origination, conceptual ideas around it. And I love what Maria said. You took my tagline because it's all about the chocolate sauce. And recently, the Nagarjuna teachings from the Wisdom chapter, Geshe Michael's teaching for July's Lamrim, was all about this too, right? And things that are not physical nor mental, relate to the question of the conceptual idea of a seed, the conceptual idea of a karma, and what I guess we have to maybe on one level answer or question the emptiness of karma. And that's a whole thing that has to be kind of clearly understood, that we're still overlaying our conceptual idea of a seed. That's a misperception, most generally speaking, in my crazy world. Even the misperception of understanding the conceptual understanding of karma is misperceived. And so I'm overlaying a part of my awareness of karma and the emptiness of karma. I'm overlaying a misperception, which has parts. And to deconstruct that is our job, in a way, because we're being forced to take the idea of, and I think seed is a better word than karma, because the chocolate sauce is that final moment of a projected, eliminated overlay forced on us, right? To see a dog chew toy and a human pen. And then what's so interesting is that what Peter added about the parts of a pen or the parts of a seed are not only, think about the path of preparation at that moment when you actually understand for the first time, that last moment of the overlay of the tea kettle on the stove. What's really going on there? And this is what's going on with the parts of the seed that's ripening, to understand the overlay that's happening when the chocolate sauce hits the parts of the pot on the stove, right? When I hear the story, I never get tired of his Geshe Michael's full explanation of the moment where you totally have the direct experience of dependent origination, and that experience is watching the mind watching the parts and filling in the parts that aren't there. And that's what we do every single day with every object that is perceptually resulting in things that are physical, things that are not physical nor mental, and things that are unchanging. So that moment when suddenly you explore the moment of dependent origination, where the parts and the physical nature of parts, the eye picking up all the components of color and form and where those pieces are being placed together, is only part of the equation. The other part of the equation is all the things we don't see that we fill in. So we don't see the bottom of the teapot. We don't see the rounded sides of the teapot. We don't see the subtle maybe chips on the other side of the teapot when it was dropped, and the width of the handle that's overlaying on the opposite side of our perception of that moment. And we're watching the mind fill in the parts that don't even exist perception-wise into what we consider a perfect pot, which are other seeds that we are forced to actually ignite, not only the image of a mental image of a pot on a stove, but also the parts coming together for the first time, and then the overlay of that moment where we have that final chocolate sauce to say, pot. And I think that's the thing for me, is that I'm always misunderstanding my misperception of what I perceive as a valid pot on the stove. I'm overlaying that with another part of the seed that's ripening, that's saying it's still a misperception because I'm being forced to see it out there. And and that's fun to play with, because we're doing it even in our meditation if we take it to the cushion. When we do a emptiness of me and mine, or the idea that we take to the cushion is to disprove the misperception and drop into that place and then perceive it directly. So we're I think Ben Kramer taught me one day, just before we were entering through your retreat, he taught me, there's a Gyaltsab Je meditation about visualizing the space around you in your meditation room. You put everything together, right? The altar, the pieces on the altar, what's behind you, what you sit on, the colors of the walls. And it's the four empty space thing. And then you take it all away. You take the mental image you've created, all away, and then trick the mind into dropping it to something deeper. And that, I don't know, I like to play with that, because then maybe we drop into the direct experience of dependent origination, or maybe something even more interesting. So yeah, it's really the only game in town. The chocolate sauce is the only game in town for this subject, because I don't know. We got deconstructed 2 weeks ago for about 8 sessions with Geshe Michael on Nagarjuna's wisdom chapter. And it was just an amazing exercise of getting to a point where, the overlay in this particular subject, in Venerable Paula's beautiful text book, is all about this idea of the overlay to me. One last thing, and I'll shut up. There's also, when I read this last night and I reviewed a little bit this morning, there's also this, we have to consider how dependent origination is defined, and it's defined by the result, right? Sometimes, like, the result is actually telling you where the causes came from, and that's this beautiful other 180-degree thing that cracks open our brain a little bit more to say, we define the causes by the result itself. And that's a play with that for a while. That's a really fun thing to do. But this is a juicy subject.
Thank you, JB. That was, and this gets into the direct reading. One of the juice of this understanding of this highest level, the highest level of understanding dependence. So, Rachel, I have a question for you. So Rachel Webb, she's one of the executive directors of 3 Jewels, which is a flagship center in New York. They do amazing work. They've done an amazing job of reaching out to new communities and bringing in new students and being able to make these teachings extremely accessible to them and then hooking them into karma and emptiness. It's so cool to see, like, all the creative ways that they're taking these deep teachings and saying, all right, guys, come on in. And then, pulling them over to deeper teachings. So Rachel, thank you for all your beautiful work.
Oh, thank you. I'm very starstruck right now, even though I get to see some of you a little bit more than others. And I'm also struck by by 2 things. One is that this is like the best thing I could ever do with my time. And sometimes I forget that, and I'm just like, I want to drink coffee and check Instagram. But then once I'm taking the medicine of these teachings, I'm immediately reminded in a fresh way each time how profound it is. And the other thing I wanted to share is you're talking about the hook of meeting something very accessible and then getting drawn in deeper into karma and emptiness, the teachings on dependent origination, liberation, how to get free. And you immediately made me think of when I met my teacher. I wasn't like really looking for the karma and emptiness thing. I just met a nice guy in a coffee shop. And then from there, the journey, it was Alice in Wonderland, began. So here I am. And you wanted me to talk about, sorry, I got lost in the love for a moment. You wanted me to talk about Rikchi. You wanted me to talk about Chi Chedrak, right?
In a way, yes. So first, I'm going to have you read one of the proofs from the reading.
Okay.
And then I kind of want to debate a bit of what it said and relate it to what JB was teaching.
Alrighty.
So here it is. So it's cool in this text that Choni Lama says there's 2 ways to understand dependence, interdependence. And he calls it the common and uncommon way, which is very curious in my humble opinion. So we're going to talk about the uncommon way, okay? Mm-hmm. It struck me very interesting. It was just like, wow, what's uncommon about this? So anyhow, Rachel, here in verse 409, if you could read the English, and the translators have it, but translators, give us a little bit of time. If you can read this proof, and then we'll talk about this paragraph.
Sure. Here's another way we can say it. Nothing in the universe exists through any nature of its own. Because first of all, none of those things which are qualities, whether we're talking about the total amount of knowable things, or the quality of existing without ever changing, or the quality of being a functioning thing, or water pitchers, or anything else of the like, exists through any nature of its own. And secondly, none of those things which are characteristic of those qualities, none of those existing things which we are not considering as a quality, exist through any nature of its own either.
I'm just giving a little extra time for translators. And for us just to absorb that. What does that mean? Okay. All right. So there's two interesting things here. We have this idea of qualities, which I highlighted, and then things that are characteristic of those qualities. Okay. All right. Those are the two main ideas, Rachel, that I'd like to discuss.
Okay.
So, you know, so it seems like in that paragraph that Choni Lama is saying that the qualities, we can talk about what that is, and then things that are characteristic of those qualities don't exist on their own. They have no nature of their own. They depend upon each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if you know, could you pull out, what do you think that means? Like, and what does it mean to say quality and characteristic? And this is hard, I know. And this is, we're getting to the meat of something really cool here, I think. You know, what do you think that means?
Sure. I mean, when I try to apply these teachings to my life, I usually come at it from a perspective of, how is this going to help me with my mental afflictions? How is this going to help me get what I want? And I'm like thirsty for that connection. So when I think about this, I immediately start to apply it to myself and the things I want to change about myself inside. But I heard Geshe Michael say recently that you should start with something outside first. It's a little bit easier. And so the common example that I remember from taking the ACI courses about this concept is when you take the idea of a car being the chi or the quality, and then like Lamborghini being characteristic of that quality. Sorry, I'm trying to use like a spicier car. I know we usually say Chevy or like Cadillac or something. Then you have Lamborghini as characteristic of that quality. So all Lamborghinis are necessarily cars, but not all cars are Lamborghinis. I think we can agree to that, right? So I think this is what we're pointing at this part of the text. And the cool thing, I think, in terms of meditation, I don't really like meditating. I'm not very good at it, but I try really hard. So I'm like, what is the most effective thing? Like, what is going to allow me to slice through to where I need to get to when I take on a practice or when I take on a meditation? And I think what this is pointing at is if I can prove the emptiness of the chi or the jedrak, if I can prove the emptiness of the Lamborghini or car, then it will necessarily apply. Meaning like, okay, if I can prove the emptiness of car, then the Lamborghini will probably be empty and I can move forward from there. If I can prove the emptiness of the Lamborghini, then okay, probably will be an easy step to emptiness of the car. I think that's what he's getting at here, but I might be missing a nuance, and you can tell me, Tim. And I also thought that we could talk a little bit about Rachel and all the different Rachels in that quality, but I can wait.
I think that's a really good place to start, is like, you know, the idea of car, right? Mm-hmm. Actually depends on there being a Lamborghini. Like, you can't have car without Lamborghini.
Mm-hmm.
Car, right? But you also can't have a Lamborghini without car. Mm-hmm. You know, they depend upon each other, right? So what I want to kind of what I want to drive into here, and this another question is, when JB was saying, you know, when you look at this mug, right? you're only seeing, you're seeing this side of it, you're seeing this, you're seeing a little indicator. There's a little thing here that says a nice message about from, Trader Joe's, right? But you're not seeing the bottom part. You're not seeing what's over here. You're not seeing any of those things, right? This is a cup, a mug, right? But then JB's saying, like, how do you make it a full cup? Like, how does it become a cup for you, right? And he was asking that question, like, how do you see full cup, even though your eyes aren't seeing the whole thing? In fact, all of you on the screen are only seeing pixels right now. You're not even seeing a cup. If you think you're seeing a cup, what are you looking at, right? Are you looking at Rachel's or Ola's or John Brady's right now? Right? We're just looking at little pixels on the screen, right? But how does this object become a full cup for us? Like cupness, right? How is that possible? So I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about, I'm going to jump back to Peter here. Like, how does, if we're taking this idea of cupness, cup, right? And then the cup, how does that work in dependence? Like, what's happening in our mind when it comes to seeds?
That's a pretty big question, I'd say.
I know.
First of all, thank you for all your contributions, Maria, JB, and Rachel. And I've been listening, and I'm trying to watch my mind, because I'm also, this is the holy grail of, I think, of getting to that realization that I think if you're here, you all want to. And I start to answer the question, Tim, by going on a little sidetrack. When I watch my mind reading the reading and also a little bit the debate, I realize that what my mind immediately does when I'm reading that there is no quality, no chi that has any nature from its side, and there is no cherak, no member of the quality that has any nature from its side. And then I think last time we even said, even the connection between the members of the quality and the qualities itself does not exist from its side. Then what my mind really does is thinking, oh my God, all those things don't exist. And when you're doing the thing with the cup, which I love, right? Because it's so, I think you can perceive, you can experience your own misperception. When you look at the thing and you might as well, you have a cup in your hand and you say, well, but how about the backside? And how about the bottom? And how about, and you say, yeah, but it's, your mind is kind of saying, yeah, I know you're trying to philosophize with me, the other part of your mind, but it's there. And then when I debate in my mind, I think I'm always not consciously falling off the other cliff and saying, oh, he's saying it's not there at all. And that's not true. It is there. There is a cup. And there is a chi. And there is a cherak. And there are cars. And Lamborghini has the quality of car. And if there would not be a quality of car, there couldn't be a Lamborghini or any other kind of example for a cherak and vice versa, right? We're not saying it doesn't exist at all. And for me, that's helpful to remember, because then I can come back to saying all those things do exist and they come from my seed. There is no other way of existing. And that helps me in that debate, because we're not saying nothing exists. I hope, right? Because then we're in trouble. There are qualities, there are existing things, there are changing things, there are unchanging things. And they do function. Exactly, thank you, cheers. But their source of existence is what we're debating. Sorry, Tim, can you repeat your question?
No, that's fine. I think you went in a direction, that I think is important for us to understand that, we're not saying that
синхронно, что это важно помнить, вещи происходят.
So I think what I wanted, part of it is, if a seed opens, right? If we're trying to get to a place,
Если мы хотим достичь,
originally I wanted to call this talk of like getting closer to the chochok, highest dharma, the fourth.
Acercarse más a la cuarta parte del camino de preparación. Es cómo nosotros podemos hacer todas estas prácticas para que podamos detonar esa experiencia. Cómo detonar completamente el poder ver cómo se abre una semilla que aparentemente tiene partes, María. Tengo que pensar acerca de esta. Yo te puedo debatir con esto, María, pero después de ver cómo se abre una semilla y la salsa de chocolate de esta taza. Así que mi pregunta es lo último que hacemos con cada uno de ustedes, con cada uno. ¿Cómo es una forma en la que tú practicas esa idea? Pones en práctica esa idea. La práctica, y vamos a pasar por todas las personas que están en Zoom. ¿Cómo se abre la semilla? ¿Correcto? Y entonces, de alguna manera, la salsa de chocolate o la imagen luminosa sale y se abre en una mente y entonces se convierte en taza.
How does
Vedem cana. Care este o practică pe care o faceți fiecare dintre voi care vă ajută să vă apropiați mai mult de acest lucru? Ok, o să încerc. Țin minte că alergam prin pădurile din Suedia.
一点生命力跑步的时候，我在问我自己，
And what's the difference between tree and bush? Because there are hell a lot of bushes also in the Swedish forest. And when does that small little thing, which looks like a grass, become a bush? And it was frustrating. And eventually on that road, I think then what we, and JB touched upon it already also, what we have to ask ourselves, when you see that the pod is coming from your seed, the real question is, well, how do you see yourself at that point in time? Like, it's okay to see the pod coming from, but what about the dude who is seeing that the pod is coming from the seed, and where does the seed come? Where's the me that we always say the seed comes from? And that always gets me closer to the mind-only school explanation of karma, which is saying there is no, it's a mistake to actually have the discussion as we have it, that there is a separate object, a separate perception, and a separate subject perceiving that object. It all comes out of one karmic seed. And then the question is the same with the pod, right? Well, then what are the parts of that one karmic seed, which includes the object, the perception of the subject? And if you then, for me, connect to that idea, subtle impermanence, which means that we're constantly disappearing and resurrecting ourselves out of emptiness, then I think you can get close to really questioning, well, where the hell is the me? If the object subject perception thing is not the way you think it is. In addition, on a timeline, in a bigger debate, you could say, well, a past life proves that you are not who you are right now. It's because the past life is something completely different, but that happens every millisecond. Then I think that's a way to try to get, for me, to get closer to that.
Cool. I'm going to kick it over to JB. Like, JB, what's answer the same question, like in your own practice? How do you push yourself into understanding dependence?
Yeah. I do. I like the meditation practice of me or mine is kind of my flavor of the month usually, and I like it. It came upon us with the Four Empty Spaces Utpal and I were having dinner one night at my cabin during a break, and it was so much fun because we were comparing what Geshe Michael was saying about the four empty spaces, and those three and four spaces especially, and which one was dependent origination and which one was the direct, the drop into direct perception, and were they functioning things that would take us there. And there was two things I had after Peter and Maria. Can I say something before I tell you what my silly practices are? There's the archetype idea of cup, right? Geshe Michael goes into this. It's a lower school idea, I believe, but it's valid in the sense of how does the seed get into the mind to create a mental image of cup, right? Like, what did we do? And we can generally say in the similarity systems of the causal nature of creating a cup, there's logic and we can talk about it, but, I love the story of when when, like I saw Maitri the other day, when he's starting to see objects and looking at his mom, he's looking at his mom and pointing at something. He did it the other night when they were here. And it was, he was taking apart the top of a rose, and we had a vase of roses, and she said, petal, Maitri, say petal. And in a way, the archetype, the mental, the label gets slapped on pen at some point, or what Rachel was talking about, right? The car. Are we putting the mental image of our, the seed that the karmas that created the mental image of parts and then a thing without a label? And I love this debate about how that works, right? So if I take something like the emptiness of me and mine to the cushion, the proof for me is what a 45 or 50 minute sit results in, at minute 49 or minute 45. Like, if I'm looking at catching the luminous image of the state of the mind and or body in any given point in my meditation, I'm damn well sure at minute 48 that my mind is perceiving a completely different me or mine. I am totally a different human being. I am not the same person that sat on the cushion. I got up and sat thinking it would help me with this wonderful conversation, for 38 minutes this morning. And I, even in a terribly, overlay, neutral or not so good meditation, I still perceive myself differently than when I sat down on the cushion. That I wasn't the same person. That the mental images that were overlaying the physical body, because it was mostly that to try to wake up faster, but it was that idea that I was looking for, this John's, perception of how he's perceiving at this very moment, how I'm sitting, what's the qualities of my body at this moment. And that was so much of a intro for my meditation that I could say really my perception at minute 38 when I got off of the cushion was different. And physically I was different because my ankle fell asleep. And so, mental images. And does, Venerable Paula chimed in on the chat when Peter said, the cup exists. And she said, does it really? And that's where it gets into what school we're going to play in, right? And that's the fun of this conversation, is that we have all these incredible translations going on and into these relevant distinctions between each school. And we have to know the schools because they have different definitions of exactly what we're talking about. And so the consequence school is like, the uppity, we're kind of we're consequence school learners. And I think this is a ramp up that is such a healthy ramp up from the schools that we practice through in DCI as well, right? With the hippie school and the accountant school and the mind only and the sutra school. What are we doing? Well, we're ramping up the levels and layers, the archaeological dig over the centuries of how we've come to the conclusion that our school is right. Just kidding. But I do think that we're all on that trajectory right now. So the emptiness of the mind perceiving the emptiness of a body in a given meditation, you eliminate what you know it isn't. So it's canceling what it's not all the time, right? And the more we cancel, we think is the emptiness of the body. You go looking for me and mine, right? And and there's so much knowledge base, old ACI, Geshe Michael, am I my rope? Am I my foot? Am I my, he goes through it very clearly through the emptiness of the parts. And then he gets to the point, then how do you get glued together as Michael? And I think that's what we're doing in a good, deep emptiness meditation. And it fluctuates with dependent origination. It fluctuates with understanding dependent origination over and over until you have it. And you actually have, that point where the teapot exposes its true nature. And that's cool if we can do that.
Thank you, JB.
Yeah.
We have a couple. We're only about 2 minutes left, but Rachel, I don't want to shortchange it, but we're running out of time. But I want to hear what's your, if you had to offer one accessible practice that you do in this, dense philosophy to help, what would that be?
Yeah. Thank you. I've been working with this beautiful image of something that Geshe Michael shared in the Yoga Sutra teachings, which is when we talk about our existence, like on this planet, that it's kind of like when you have water coming out of a hose and it gets like all the stuff that gets stuck on the outside of the hose, that our identity, you can think of it as ice or something, that our identity is like this calcification around something else. And so when I say calcification, I mean like a hardening or solidifying around something else that doesn't have to take that form, just for the translators, if that's more helpful, I don't know. And so I've been thinking about melting down and melting down and melting down who it is that I think I am, because it's really uncomfortable to be stuck in one form, to be stuck in one time, stuck in one space, stuck in one identity. I think that's where a lot of my pain comes from. I'll be really quick. And so when I think about how the way that I've been working with it in my meditation, how is it that I can melt this identity down that brings me pain and keeps me from what I want? I look a lot at Rachel over time, and I ask myself, am I all of the me's that I've been up till now? Am I every single moment I've ever been me up until now? Is that really who I am? Every single moment that I've lived, every thought that I've had, every identity that I've said that I am, every physical appearance that I've ever taken, just from birth until now. And then there's a part of my mind that says, yeah, you are. That's definitely who you are. You're all this stuff that happened to you when you're a kid. You're all the hopes and dreams you've ever had. And I'm like, okay, cool. Then I say, well, if that was true, then just adding one single additional second of consciousness that is called Rachel means that I was never the sum of all of those things that came before. So just the fact that I can live one more minute and still call myself Rachel means that I'm not the sum of every other moment that's happened before. And so what I do when things are hard, because just saying that to myself in my mind doesn't always remove the pain, is I think moment by moment, I'm like applying a little bit of heat to the ice of my identity, and slowly I'm melting it down. And then slowly the heat gets like bigger, and then it melts a little bit more, and then the heat gets stronger. And then soon I'll be able to break through. So I try to have hope in applying those emptiness meditations over and over and over. And then after a few years of doing that, I've gotten a little flexibility where I don't really believe the stories that I tell myself about myself anymore. And then there's a little bit of space to argue with mental afflictions about who I am. And there's some space to play and imagine who I could be and what it could feel like to be me, or what the new narrative or narratives could be. That's my quick explanation.
Thank you, Rachel. Maria, I want to give you a short opportunity as well to offer, what is your practice? Like, what is one way you could offer us, to take these ideas and to help dissolve some of these ways that we hold on to things existing from their own side outside of us?
Thank you, Peter, Jabila, and Rachel. I really love all your advice and sharing how you practice, thinking about that. Super cool. Rachel, I love what you just said. I'm taking it to my practice. Thank you. And I do believe the purpose of this meeting and all other meetings or debates we have, all teachings that we do, is I do believe we all would like to see emptiness directly, because we understand that's the solution to all our problems. And I'm sharing with you my thinking, and that's the way I'm practicing these texts and this wisdom, okay? So then I'm thinking, when I'm reading this very hard text, which is about proof of emptiness, which is supposed to be bringing me closer to seeing emptiness directly, to seeing directly how nothing exists from its own side, and how I'm creating every single thing in my reality. I'm thinking, well, if that's true, if this text, this meeting, these discussions, all this is supposed to bring me closer to that, then I'm thinking, why did author of this text and Geshe Michael and all other masters decided to have this discussion on proving the emptiness of everything? Why they divided this, all the things in the world, into these specific categories? Like, one, they considered physical things, mental things, and not mental, nothing. Okay, that I can understand. But then in this text, they give a new ideas how you can divide things and look at them, like functioning things, some other changing, unchanging, and then qualities and their characteristics, especially this. I'm like, why from all possibilities how you can divide all things, do you need to divide things into their qualities and characteristics, and and look at emptiness of them separately? And that's what I think will help me to understand something deeper about emptiness. That's what I like to think. Why do they divide all things, existing things in the world, into qualities and their characteristics? Why on earth like that? Why am I supposed to think about that? That's what I'm thinking about, and maybe that will help us to get closer to understand the way the world exists and how we can change everything into a beautiful, beautiful existence and place, and where everyone is happy all the time, no mental afflictions.
Yay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your amazing advices, your deep insights and willingness to share. I think sometimes these practices can feel vulnerable, and they can make us, it can be challenging to touch these things and to think about them. So I wanted to thank all of you here. Like JB, thank you. Rachel, Peter, and Maria, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. Let's thank a translator, Olga in Chinese, Olga in Russian, Berta in Spanish, and then Roxana in Romanian or Portuguese. I said Romanian. But it's really hard to be a translator, and because of you, it makes this accessible to so many more people. So please stay. Everyone, hug a translator. Please hug a translator. They're making it accessible and available to all of you. So just last thing, that was a preview of all the cool stuff that we do at the Diamond Cutter Classics. So starting next week, we have 2 very long, intensive weeks of study of these ancient texts from all different schools. So all different perspectives, where we started with Peter, where he was talking about, the different levels of dependence, right? And we learn about all of those things, and we learn about the reasons for all of those different understandings to help us get to this place. I think this place we were talking about, the place to be able to really understand how seeds ripen, how our practices fuel that, and how we can jump over to the other side by seeing emptiness directly. So join us with this. It's a 2 weeks of programming. You don't have to come to every class, it's recorded, but come to your favorite classes. Maybe you like Mind Only. Maybe you like Abhidharma. Maybe you like Upper Middle Way. Maybe you like Lower Middle Way, right? Pick the classes you like, the teachers you identify with, the kind of content you like, and just follow along. You don't have to come to every class. So it starts on Monday morning at 6 a.m. Arizona time. Good Lord. And thanks for joining us today. This was a really awesome day. We had we had close to 200 people join us, which is something cool is changing. And so it's really nice to have this many people with us. And I'm glad that you're all here and interested in this. So thank you, Betts Greer, for translating this beautiful, beautiful book that we can debate about and suss apart over the next generations and try to understand the details of it. And thank you, all of you, for sharing your practice. So I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Tim Lowenhub, as well, for
Thank you, Tim.
Thank
such
you.
a wonderful way to start the day. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel, JB, Maria, Tim.
Yay.
Translators.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.